Exactly. All right, we're started on the recording. Perfect. Okay, so I know I've said this a couple times already today, but just want to let everybody know on the phone that you will be on mute during the call. We'll have a Q&A session at the end of the call where I will unmute all of you. You can also use the Q&A chat to ask questions. If you do have questions during the presentation, please feel free to include them there as well, and I will get those answered for you at the end of the presentation. Since we do have two different presenters, we're going to go through both of them and then have a Q&A, so make sure to direct your question toward the appropriate presenter. With all of that in mind, thank you so much for joining us for COMMcon again and joining us for our first professor-submitted Great Ideas for Teaching Students session. We're so pleased to welcome Vicki Ellis from Oklahoma Baptist University, as well as Dan Berger from Simpson University, to present these great ideas for teaching students to you. I want to introduce our presenters and give you a little more information about their background before we get started. First up is going to be Dr. Dan Berger. He is a professor of rhetoric and philosophy at Simpson University. He received his PhD from the University of Oregon, and he is the author of Speaking the Truth in Love, Mysterious Romantic Wonder, Engaging Philosophy, and Oral Interpretation of the Bible. He currently teaches courses on advanced public communication, communication theory, field experience, oral interpretation and storytelling, and philosophy and critical thought. Dr. Vicki Ellis, who will be going second, is a professor of communication arts at Oklahoma Baptist University. After graduating from Southeastern Oklahoma State University, she started her teaching career as a competitive speech and debate coach, English teacher, and theater arts director. Additionally, she developed peer teaching workshops for faculty members and worked as the University Interscholastic League speech and debate coordinator in Texas high schools. Her high school speech and debate students were regional and state winners, and her theater company also placed in the Texas regional and state one-act play contests. Vicki, just so you know, I got that from your your online bio at your university. But Dan, I'm going to pass it over to you so that you can get started, and then once you're finished, we'll get Vicki going on the slides.
I'm presenting a semester-long project, and it's one that students are passionate about because they have to choose a social issue that they either care or are passionate about, and it gives them a purpose for creating their own voice. They provide their own reasons for different parts of it. It links all of the things of the course, such as the lectures, the reading, and the presentations, and it enables the students to gain their voice about a significant issue. But also, it's a semester-long learning process, not just a one-shot element. I have an approach to public speaking and education in general that draws from a large number of different voices throughout time and across cultures. This is an advanced public communication course. Yes, I did write the textbook for it. The course purpose is to enable the student to create a voice that speaks truth from the heart in a manner that heals brokenness in communities. And it is to imbue students with a vivacious virtue. And I am a virtue type teacher and person, and so I want the students to become speakers. Now, this course, I was having dinner with 4 previous students. We took dinner over to a lady who broke her back, and during that dinner, while we're talking with her, they started talking about taking this course, and they listed it among the top 3 or 4 courses that they had ever taken. having 4 students that I highly respect who are now solid professionals say this is one of the best courses and enable the audience to identify with their issue. They may combine a national figure with a local person. So, for example, a student who's doing something about Colin Kaepernick, who's now a quarterback involved in the height of both a NFL season and a debate, they're not going to get a hold of him, so they can put a bunch of stuff from his national interviews, but they need to talk to somebody locally that they can look in the eye who's involved in some way. And then they can combine both of those into a story. Following that, we will do a rhetorical modes and canons worksheet, and then it comes to the advocating of a single position. And I stress once again to the students, this has to come out from who you are, not just what you think. So the persuasive speech, they need to clearly advocate for a position. Almost every single student changes in some way when they have to interact with the best of another side. They also need to give us an ethical premise for why we should change, not just say we should change, but why. And this is the point where your solvency should heal brokenness in the community. It should actually advocate for a positive element. Back in 1998 or 1999, I was translating some of Aristotle's rhetoric and his Nicomachean ethics, and I began translating this, and I thought, why shouldn't I put this into a final exam? Instead of giving pen and paper for this project, I came up with a clarifying exam. Their exam is open book, open notes. They bring their portfolio with everything written, all of their outlines, all of their feedback sheets, all of their worksheets in a portfolio, and they write on it what they have intentionally done well, giving all the principles and page numbers that they can in that 2-hour block of time. Students claim that this really pushes them, and it actually accomplishes my goals for a final exam far better than anything else. So that clarifying exercise, what have you habitually done well, and how have you kept at it? So I attempt to get them to become virtuous people with a voice, healing brokenness in a community. So I turn it over to you now. Hello?
I am going to grab it, and then I will give it to Vicki. So, Vicki, I'm going to pass the ball to you. Thank you so much, Dan. And, Vicki, I just now passed the ball to you. So, let me think. If you press the share screen button, you'll be able to share your presentation slides.
Share screen, monitor 1.
I'm not sure on that. You can give it a try and we'll see what we can see.
Maybe my event window, maybe? Does that work?
Okay, that is, no, that, yeah. If you go back to the quick start section, share, yeah, just do my screen and do monitor 1.
Okay.
And we'll hope for the best. Okay, and then if you pull up your PowerPoint.
Okay.
Okay. And then start your presentation, and I think that we'll be good to go.
Okay, thank you. I appreciated Dan's opportunity to think through with him that fantastic project, and I'm on the heels of that. I think this works very well to augment his thinking about getting students, about the opportunity to have students think deeply. Plato argued in Phaedrus that oral dialogue between congenial souls is an intellectual activity far superior to writing because it can lead to truth. And so we need writing, and I don't want to understate the power of writing, but in this particular exercise for my classes here at Oklahoma Baptist University, I have them focused on the idea of thinking through ideas with not only their peers, also with their professor, as well as with external auditors from somewhere in the United States of America or abroad on the mission field. And finally, I have them thinking through their ideas with a team of external judges at the very end of the semester. And this is called Team Fiction, and it originated for my organizational communication class. And so part of this presentation, I'll be speaking to you as if you were my students. So strap yourself in as if you were an undergrad. So your team will be working with an outside consultant class and develop a fictitious organization that could potentially operate smoothly with little confusion. And the good news is your consultants have already been hired. And for my colleagues out there, even better news, I am able to hire all the consultants with zero funding because they're all volunteers. Your external consultants will help you with the following tasks. So with this organizational communication class this semester, you will develop a fictitious organization that will hopefully be quintessential. You'll have all of the money you could hope for to design your organization, all of the access to important people. You'll have floodgates open for your biggest dreams. I'm going to ask that you, in part, write a mission statement, determine the type of organization, design organizational charts, establish policies, develop goals, develop a crisis plan, design a logo, develop a marketing slogan, present your work to the class, to me, provide documentation of your work, and send a handwritten thank you note to each member of your consulting firm. And then let's think about this step by step. By the end of week 2, you will claim your type of fictitious organization so that other groups will not have the opportunity to create the same type of organization. The first report on your initial correspondence with your consulting firm will be at the end of week 3. The second report on your organizational development will be the week before spring break. And finally, the week before finals, you will compete for the most outstanding organization. The external evaluators will hear your presentations at that time. So your consultants are cool. We're going to draw for consultants today, class. This year we have a whole host of consultants. We have at the top right, you'll see a couple of physicists who teach at Stanford University. And next at the top, you could actually be getting those 3 guys from the University of Alabama. They're in the grad program there. We have a group of students from Texas Middle School Gifted and Talented class. We have a government professor who teaches on the East Coast. And we have a public speaker who speaks in the South at different women's events. So these are the opportunities for my first section. Of course, Other consultants have been hired for Section B, but these are your options. You'll draw randomly from this hat. So, today's agenda, you'll meet with your team. You'll trade phone numbers with each member of your team and check your schedules. Again, in just a moment, I'm going to pass the hat around for you to draw your consultants' names. And then, at the end of our class today, I want you to take a photo and send the consultants your picture with a very well-written email indicating you are glad they're working with you. Send an email and blind copy me. And so it'd be something like this. I'm going to leave this up here so that you can take a picture of it before you leave to meet with your group. So I'm hoping that you let them know you're in this organizational class and that and today we learned that you'll be serving as our external consultants. We're excited to work with you and develop an ideal organization. And so on the far left of the photo is Tammy. And so just tell them a little bit about yourself and let them know that you're hoping to hear some of their ideas soon. So find your teammates. I'm going to give you a few moments to get with your folks. Okay. So you found each other. These are actually some of the teams that competed this past spring. I'm honoring them today by sharing them with you. In fact, you'll see in this top left image, the Starlight Theater. That was actually one of the winning teams, and they had these T-shirts made well before the presentation day. This is one of the logos and one of the ideas from one of the competing teams. They worked with the kids from Texas, the gifted and talented kids from a school in Texas, and developed the idea for Tawakoni Heights, where future leaders rise to the peak of their success. And their logo was actually designed by the kids in the GT class, and they actually helped them with every policy statement that they developed. This one is the Starlight Theater. They developed an idea for an after-school program for kids in the local community, and they actually spoke with parents in the community to see what kind of viability this fictitious organization would actually have in the real world. This is another, I thought this was a particularly impressive logo that our students came up with. One of the teams developed a company called Internationally United Academy, Different Walks of Life United as One. And they wanted to start a program, a diversity program for English, for helping folks with English as a second language. And this was one of their opening slides to their the day of competition. What was the major challenge in transitioning to the United States? And the interesting thing about what this particular group did on the day of the final presentation was they brought these students in from across the campus to actually be a part of their presentation to give credence to the idea that their fictitious organization should become real. And these are the judges the day of the actual presentations, and they are looking at, you can see here, looking at this Pause and Pals organization. The logos are typically on the front of the documents that are given both to me and to the judges. The judges are from, this is, for example, the head of the Chamber of Commerce in Shawnee. Carrie is head of the Learning Center. Paula's head of PR in this part of Oklahoma. She works with the community, the city, and the state. And this is an accounting man from an accounting firm in Oklahoma. And they also volunteer their time to come and judge. And I'd like to say, too, that a lot of these judges have asked me for the names of the students later so that they could give them internships, and so it also fosters good networking for them. And at the end of this adventure of creating their own organization. There are winners and there are losers. So you'll notice the certificate at the top left. That was the winner went to Intertwined Theater for last semester. And that team developed an outdoor drive-in theater. And what they were able to do was find out, they even looked to find a piece of land here in Shawnee, Oklahoma that would work for this type of theater and set up all of the organizational structure and the communication parameters and talk to the local city folks about the land. And it's interesting, when they presented it to the judges, those evaluators from the local community wanted to see this actually come true. And so there is talk in the community about, in the Chamber of Commerce, about the plan that my students developed. Also, we send out certificates to each of the consulting firms. And so this was the consulting firm that helped Intertwined Theater, the winner this year. It says Serendipity. I asked the consulting firm whether or not the person is working alone, you know, from an accounting firm in Texas, or a team in Stanford, or a group of kids in Texas, or missionary team in Uganda. I asked them to come up with a name for their quote-unquote consulting firm. And so these particular students came up with the name Serendipity, and we sent each of them a certificate for being a part of this semester's project, and then all of the students sign it as well as I sign it, and then we send those out, and we always hear back. But here's to Great Communication Adventures and OrgComm. I wanted to share this particular image because the kids that came from this particular group from Texas, they were actually invited to come to the campus during the day of the presentations. So I had the auditors in the room, and then the students who gave this presentation, when they started to speak, the kids from Texas knocked on the back doors and interrupted, and I acted like I didn't know what was going on. I said, I don't know, well, I guess just answer the door. And these kids came flooding in. And then my students got really excited and a little extra nervous, too, because their consulting team was going to be there to hear their presentation. And so they just surprised them. The teacher and I worked it out. So it was a tremendous surprise and a great boost of PR for both the junior high kids in Texas as well as my students, and our local university and community paper picked up on it. They were our students were taken completely off guard, and the kids from Texas thought it was a great joy to shock the students that they had only interacted with online. And so sometimes the consultants can be forever friends, but they start out just as online consultants. The event of having students think through what it would be like to have just a smooth organization with smooth communication opportunities, horizontal, vertical, where every opportunity to communicate has been vetted and considered deeply by layers of folks who could design any type of organization, is particularly exciting. And it's been a joy to work with the organizational comm kids with this project, and it goes throughout the semester. So as we are learning the concepts from the textbook and journal articles, they're connecting those concepts to their group work and their fictitious organizations in real time. And
awesome. Thank you. Is that, I'm sorry, I thought that, okay, great. Thank you both so much. I do have a couple questions in the chat, so I'm going to ask you those, but I am going to mute everybody so that in case if you do have any questions that you'd like to answer over the phone, we can do that as well. This question is for Dan. I love that idea for a final exam, the idea that you presented for your final exam. Do you think it's a really good way to make sure they've learned everything they need to learn?
It is the best way I've come up with. It does better than a exam where I ask questions, either essay exam or objective exams, or a mixture of both. This pushes the students to have thought about it all semester long instead of preparing the week before. And so it accomplishes better my goals for a final exam.
Okay. And then I did have another question about just how students have reacted to your approach with this. I know you mentioned those 4 students, but in terms of just in general, how have your students reacted to this approach?
Generally speaking, the section between the worldview worksheet and the informative speech, the students become very surprised at the seriousness at which they have to take a social issue and not just stand there and shout at the other side, but to come to understand it. And invariably, they are surprised that people with other opinions actually have great reasons and evidence for them. And so trying to come to understand the other person and the other side, and then switching to the interview and story, they have to put a personal face on it, and it is unanimous that they now approach it differently. So instead of a dry academic arm's length something, it's actually penetrated their mind and heart.
Okay, great.
That answer the question?
I'm sorry, what was that, Jen?
That answer the question?
I think so, yeah. And I do have a couple questions for Vicki as well. Vicki, it's amazing how many people you are able to get to help out, judges, consultants, etc. Is it difficult to find people willing to help, and how do you approach them?
Oh, that's a great question. If you are interested in the letter that I send to the external consultants as a way to persuade them to be a part, I would be happy to send that document to you. Just email me at vicki.ellis@okbu.edu. But I found that one way in particular is to keep a watchful eye for where alumni go and for the people who are working with our alum. And so it's always easy for us in particular to have missionary teams, and there's high school students or college students from another part of the globe. It's also probable that I go to people that I know first, who I've met at conferences and who I've worked with in the summer. For example, one of the teams I was able to gather when I was telling my niece about the project, she said, "Oh, we get community service work at our bank, and I know two of the staff that work in my office with me would love to work on an education project." And so 2 bank officers were on the board this past year as well. But I'd couch it as the way I see it, as an honor for them to get to participate in university life and influence my students. And they also oftentimes want to influence them to consider a career with their particular area. Of course, when we bring kids on board, that's a win-win because the gifted and talented teachers that I've worked with, they love the opportunity for a unique project. And, you know, every once in a while I'll have somebody that I invite say, oh, I've got to pass this year because of this event or that event. But typically I have more than enough consultants, so I ended up having to have 10 at least a semester, either 10 teams or 10 individuals. There's usually a combination thereof. But it's never been, not once have I had a problem getting enough consultants. This last year I had to, one of the consultants had to go out of the country and he was afraid he wouldn't have enough time to email back. So I contacted a business club at a university, and I just cold called the president of the College of Business Club at a university in Georgia, and they said yes, we're always looking for ways to collaborate with other schools. So I don't think you would have trouble getting enough consultants on board, and they're so proud when they hear back from the kids, and when they, especially if their team wins or if they get to hear from them later. And like I said, some actually keep up with their consultants from then on. As far as the gift for the judges at the end of the semester, that truly is an honor. I will keep my eyes out for people who are doing great things in the community. And as soon as I see something in the newspaper or local news about them, I'll say, congratulations on this. As a result, you know, your connection to our university and to the community, I would be honored if you could come and work with our students and evaluate their end-of-the-year projects. And I've never had a no on that.
Wow, that's really impressive. That's really impressive.
Mm-hmm.
I do have one more question for you, Vicki. Do the student groups typically come together pretty easily, and how do they seem to get along in these situations?
Another good question. I am very sensitive to developing those student groups. When I asked them the very first day of class, this is about a couple of weeks before the groups are designed, let me know if there's someone in here that you would especially love to work with, just one or two names. And then if for conflict reasons due to scheduling problems, you know, if it would just be impossible for a vocalist to work with someone on the basketball team because of scheduling, just, you know, let me know that too. Give me any hints that will make this the best possible combination. And I will do my best to honor all of that. And don't worry, and I tell them, don't worry, because if someone is not pulling his or her weight, I will vote them off the island on your behalf. So, and I give them an alternative experience. But I'm very, and I keep in touch with each team to make sure that each member is contributing to a positive environment. And additionally, at the end of the semester, they evaluate each other. They evaluate their consulting firm. They evaluate each other. They are evaluated. So ideas are vetted from start to finish.
Great. And then I have one more question for Dan. They were curious regarding your informative speech. What are some of the examples of what students have said to create wonder and curiosity?
One of the interesting topics this semester is about Colin Kaepernick's protest, and his element of creating wonder and curiosity was actually to say, Kaepernick sounded like an idiot at the start of this, and most of society thought, this guy doesn't have a brain or anything. But then he started giving some interviews, and here are a couple of things he said. And said, that makes me more interested. Now, how did he respond when the Seattle Seahawks joined arm in arm on the other side of the field? Okay, so you have a protest in the opposite direction on the other side of the field. That creates a exigence. Okay, how did he? And he kept giving little teasers of that through the speech. He did a wonderful job of creating wonder and curiosity.
I'm already curious, to be honest. I want to hear that speech.
Another one that was really, really good, she's doing the Canadian stuff. There was a woman who was killed by her own pit bull, and so the city's going through creating pit bull legislation. And so she starts asking questions about different breeds of dogs and stuff, and then it's not really about a dog, it's about people. And she made us think that she's very much against these dogs, where really it was against the dog owners. And then talked about the dogs. So yes, they get very creative.
That's really cool. That's really cool. Are there any other questions on the phone? I don't have any other questions in the chat. Any other questions on the phone?
I was wondering if Dan could share an example of what one of the students wrote on the 3x5 card.
Okay. The first thing is to identify the social issue or problem or question. So what is it? Then, why are you passionate about it? Why do you care? How does this affect the community? And why? So you have to put all of that on one side of a 3x5 card. In other words, you have to have prepared simple sentences or complex sentences that cover the whole thing.
Do you happen to have an example of how one of the students did that?
I do not have an example of that right in front of me. I'm sorry. I would have to go into our electronic media for the school to pull it up.
No problem, no problem.
One of the very creative ways, a young man who's doing stuff on the Ferguson riots, basically, he was very much, he's an African-American, very much in the pro-Ferguson riot element. And the contrast between that and when he gave his informative speech is absolutely dramatic, because all of a sudden, when he realizes what the words that cause riots do, and that the burning of the 7-Eleven store and pharmacy robbing and all that stuff actually harm their voice, he changed his position drastically. So he was very adamant one way, and in his informative, he says, we need somebody like Martin Luther King Jr. to take over this and become a nonviolent protest. But nobody's strong enough to lead that right now. So his 3x5 card compared to his informative speech, he's drastically changed.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Great. Well, I think that pretty much wraps it up. So thank you both to Dan and Vicki for presenting today. We really appreciate your time and just sharing these great assignments that unbeknownst to us when we asked for these submissions that we would get 2 semester-long assignments. So that was very fun for me. I'm really glad that you both were able to join us today and that everybody was able to come to our first day of COMMcon. We'll have more sessions tomorrow, so if you want more information on that, you can go to community.macmillan.com, and hopefully we'll see you again tomorrow.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody. Okay, have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.